Hello and welcome to episode 9 of Film School Podcast for Wednesday, the 9th of September 2020. My name is Adam Werner, and today I am joined by the one and only film guru himself, Josh. J. Luke. How you doing, Josh?
I'm doing well, thanks, Adam. Right intro song this week. Well done.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, I nearly forgot your name, so we're off to a great start.
Perfect.
Followed by the Scary Movie Maiden and final girl, Emily Pratt. Man, this is great. Jeez.
Should we redo it?
No,
Let's read.
We're going strong. Em, how you doing, Em?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm very well. And lastly, we have the rom-com expert, Kris Birchie. How you doing, Kris?
I'm really well, thanks. So I'm wearing a blanket, essentially, called an Oodie, which is a good friend of the podcast.
You guys all have those, don't you?
Yeah, I think if we're ever going to get a sponsor, it's probably going to be from Oodie.
100%.
I'll push really hard for that. I'll reach out to their social media team and tweet out about it, shall I?
I'm wearing the avocado and toast version.
I am a fan of the sloth print myself.
And I'm a unicorn fan, personally, so there we go.
There's our sponsorship. If they hear this and don't give us one, there's something seriously wrong.
100%.
It's oodie.com as well, isn't it?
Shut.
Yeah.
All right. Let's move on. So if you haven't watched Film School Podcast before, this is a podcast where we talk about the films that we watch throughout the week. And then we also jump into the movie of the week. And the movie of the week this week is none other than Portrait of a Lady on Fire. You can follow us at on Letterboxd. So I have J. Luke for Josh, Emily Pratt for Emily, Kris Birchie for Kris, and King Frogby for myself. All right, so what do we watch this week, guys?
So we are back in cruise control this week as I watched Edge of Tomorrow, the 2014 science fiction action flick starring Tommy Gunn Cruise and directed by Doug Liman. It is based off the 2004 Japanese light novel All You Need Is Kill, and it takes place during an alien invasion of Earth and the subsequent war that follows. The world has banded together and scored one victory against the aliens in Verdun, thanks to a new supersuit they have crafted and a hero in the form of Emily Blunt. Tommy plays a army PR man who is sent against his will to the front line in order to raise morale and show that anyone can use these supersuits. On the first day of battle, predictably, our main man is killed, but in doing so he kills an alien that gives him the power to reset the day every time he dies. Yes, it's another infinite time loop story, but I love me a good infinite time loop, and this is a very, very good one. Tommy teams up with Emily Blunt, who we discover had this same power at the last battle, but has since lost it. We see them go through countless attempts to win the battle and end the war over the course of one day, and it's just a great time. Anytime TGC is saving the world, it is a good time to me. I gave this one 4 stars, I believe. I've seen this a fair few times before. It's one of my favourite Tom Cruise movies, and I highly recommend it.
I also highly recommend this movie. It is arguably one of the best video game based movies, I reckon, out there.
Yeah.
Just the idea of respawning and starting again. I guess Groundhog Day, but yeah. Tom Cruise, Emily Blunt.
I think we're almost going to get to the point where the whole Groundhog Day isn't the main comparison, because we're seeing so many of these recently. But this is probably the best version I've seen of it in an action movie.
Yep. Have you guys seen it, Kris and Emily?
I haven't.
I may have. The only comment I've got is it sounds like Tom Cruise has taken over from Brad Pitt for you, Josh.
See, if I had to pick one man to save the world, it would be Tom Cruise. But if I had to spend those last few days with one man, it would definitely be Brad Pitt.
Right, okay. That's the classic marry and spend time with one.
Exactly.
Fairly sure there's another one in there, but we'll move on.
Yeah.
Emily.
It's definitely Brad Pitt for that one as well, guys.
All right. One of the movies I watched was Ma. So, from last year. I remember seeing heaps of trailers of the movies, but then it was almost like it just didn't come out, or maybe I don't know, somehow missed it. But yeah, it's a psychological horror film. And yeah, it's got a few notable actresses in it. We've got Octavia Spencer playing the main role as Ma, and there's also Juliette Lewis who makes an appearance too. It's directed by Tate Taylor, who's teamed up with Octavia Spencer on a number of other films too, such as The Help and Get On Up. And he's also friends with Juliette Lewis, who's going to be appearing on another upcoming movie of his with Octavia Spencer again. And basically, it's about this group of 5 teenagers who befriend this lonely middle-aged woman by asking her to buy them alcohol, seeing as they're all underage. Then, after meeting them once, Ma ends up offering them her basement to party in, which they don't ask any questions about or anything. And soon enough, Ma's ends up being the place to party for all of the teens from their school. But following on from this, things start to get a little bit weird for them because Ma becomes just a little bit stalkerish and obsessive, and yeah, I won't spoil the rest. The movie itself is quite camp, I suppose you could say. There's a lot of times where I got really, really frustrated while watching it because it's one of those movies where the characters just don't act rationally. Like, there's a lot of really questionable decisions made, but it's still entertaining, I thought, and I still actually did enjoy watching it for the most part. And yeah, same goes with like the dialogue too. There's a few conversations between adults where like there's this one of the adults calls Ma like a loser or something and accuses her of being a loser still or something ridiculous. And I was just like, is that really something you'd say to another adult? But anyway, so it's like, yeah, it's kind of funny or cringy in a way, I suppose. And the other thing I'd just like to quickly say too is that I found it a bit of a stretch to say that it's a horror movie. I think it probably falls more under the umbrella of a thriller probably, but it's only really at like the very end that you start to get like a little bit of horror, I felt. But overall, I was quite engaged by it. I really wanted to know where it was going to end up going, but it was by no means great. So to sum it up, I wouldn't recommend it to people, but at the same time, I wouldn't recommend not watching it. So hopefully that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. I'll probably give it a watch. I'll probably give it a good hate watch. Hate the characters.
It wasn't like, it wasn't not worth watching, but just like don't go into it expecting anything good.
I think the rational decisions is what separates bad horror from good horror. Because it seems like in all the good horrors, you're like, yeah, everyone's making rational decisions that you'd actually make.
Whereas this, no.
The decisions in this, they're definitely not the best by the characters. Some of their reactions and their dialogue as well. But,
but it doesn't even have to be like good characters and good decisions. Like if it's good horror, but it doesn't sound like this is good horror either.
No, and like they do have a bit more of a storyline to it, where like you're meant to feel a bit of compassion for Ma and that sort of stuff. But it's just like, I don't know, I've liked what they've tried to do, but there's just something that's kind of gone wrong and it hasn't really worked out the way they intended, I think.
And the benchmark for horror is so high these days as well that it's sort of hard to get away with what they used to get away with in the 90s and the 2000s.
Very true.
Did it have a satisfying ending?
Like it was fine. Like, yeah.
Okay. All right, Kris.
All right, I watched Yesterday. So this movie is written by Richard Curtis, who notably wrote Love Actually, Notting Hill, and numerous other rom-coms. It's directed by Danny Boyle, who it has directed things like Trainspotting and Slumdog Millionaire, so an all-star sort of directing and writing cast. To sum up this movie, it's about a struggling singer-songwriter named Jack Malik, who, after numerous setbacks, decides to give up on his musical dream. On his bike ride home, the power all over the world goes off for 12 seconds. During this time, Jack gets hit by a bus. He then wakes up in hospital, oblivious as to what has occurred. Once he's left the hospital, his friends have got him some presents, one of them being a new guitar, and they request him to play a song. Jack says something along the lines of, "A great guitar deserves a great song," so he plays the Beatles' Yesterday, to which his friends have no idea about the song or even who the Beatles are at all. He thinks at this moment that they're just taking the piss out of him or doing a prank. So on his return home, he Google searches the Beatles to only reveal the insect and finds that his music collection no longer contains the Beatles' music either. So that's pretty much the first 20 minutes of the story. And from this point on, Jack sets out to recreate, record, and release as many Beatles songs as he can. So he does this by obviously remembering things that he knows and also visiting iconic places that the Beatles wrote songs about. So it also involves a romantic comedy aspect with his manager, Ellie, who was clearly in love with him and has been ever since she saw him play Oasis Wonderwall in junior high. So the storyline isn't Richard Curtis's strongest romantic comedy, but it is a creative way of getting so many Beatles songs into a modern movie. I had a lot of fun watching and kept thinking, there's another Beatles hit, and another, and another. How good are the Beatles? And there's this scene that I really liked where Jack is trying to remember the song Eleanor Rigby. I really liked how they associated the visuals of him remembering the lyrics. So having scenes to do with the lyrics, and in particular, he made quite a few mistakes in it, so they portrayed that quite well. And I suppose as the popular Australian music critic Molly Meldrum would say, do yourself a favour and watch, or in particular, listen to this movie. 3.5 out of 5 for me, and it got that extra 0.5 due to the music itself, just because it's the Beatles. So, that's what I gave it. And I know there's a few comments to be spoken about after this.
Yeah, Josh and I have been arguing about this all week. Go, Josh.
By all week, you mean like 2 days?
No,
we never go.
All
Oh,
week.
really?
Yeah, we've been doing this like side by side, like
I
in our own little private chat.
I've seen the first 20 minutes of this movie and turned it off because I hated it so much. But
Well,
it's
that's
just,
all I explained. I only explained the first.
yeah, and I could not stand the first 20 minutes. I didn't think anyone had any chemistry. But this isn't my like strong suit of a genre. Like, unless you bring me something really, really inventive, I'm not really going to get into it. And the fact that this is Danny Boyle and Richard Curtis, and it came out so, from what I've seen up to, fine, like just plain. I just really wasn't into it, and I don't like hearing covers of Beatles songs either.
Okay, all right, Josh. I'm about to tell you my worst date that I ever had, and it involves this movie. But like, I will say that the thing I think that makes this movie stand out, putting aside because I went back and saw the movie after I had the worst date ever with this movie, is the ending. I think the direction, like the last or the final act goes, is just something that's, you think you know where it's going to go and you think you know what's going to happen, but then they do a total shift, and that's probably spoilers, but I really enjoyed that aspect. So, because I just really want to tell you everyone about this terrible date that I had. So at the time I was, on dating apps, and I had connected with like this Russian, and which is very me, just in terms, dated lots of culturally different people, and we went to, she'd sent me an invite being like, hey, want to go check out the movie yesterday? And I was like, sure, no worries, let's go. Went to the movie theater, and it's packed because it's, I think, opening weekend. We're in the middle of like Crown Casino watching it, and we're sitting there, and then the songs start playing. And for whatever reason, she decides that it's okay to sing along to every single song. Every song. Like, so a song starts, she starts singing. And I, as a movie fan, hate everything about this. I'm like, it'd be fine if it like this. Actually, no, it would not be fine. If the cinema wasn't full, but it was full of people, and people keep looking over, and the only thing I could do was turn to her and kiss her and make her shut up. So every time a song played, I would kiss her to make it stop. And I went to the toilet during the middle of the movie, and I texted everyone that I knew, and I was like, I need out. I've never wanted to end something so quickly.
I reckon too, that would have been a lot of kisses, Adam, because in that last hour, there's probably like 30 songs.
I can't describe how annoying this date was. Anyways, I called it off after that, and that's why I just really wanted someone to bring up this movie at some point. I think that maybe that's why, I don't know, I always wanted a bad date story, and that's it. All right,
That's
moving
a fun
on.
story.
I watched the movie, the Netflix original that just came out, Love Guaranteed.
Because of course you did.
Of course I did. So the pitch is so I thought this was going to be just sort of your standard run of the mill rom-com, and sure it is, but I think that it is a lot better than what Netflix has produced otherwise. But the pitch is, to save a law firm, a lawyer takes a high-profile case against a dating website that guarantees love. And as the case heats up, so do the events between the lawyer, which is Susan, actor Rachel Lee Cook, and Damon Wayans Jr., Nick, the guy who can't find love. It's directed by Mark Steven Johnson, the guy who did like Ghost Rider, Daredevil, and like When in Rome. So he's done a few little rom-coms here and there. Not that I listed many of them.
I was going to say,
yeah,
sweet rom-com lineup.
Yeah, When in Rome was probably the and I think that that's a pretty good rom-com. I think that this like absolutely has like the biggest Hollywood ending, and it is super cliche and it's full of tropes. I think what this does a little bit better than the other sort of Netflix rom-coms is it has a really good, like the characters are really well developed. The humor's quite dry compared to like sort of slapstick humor. Yeah, that was a great, like if you want something that's really cheesy and just to escape, this was a great little Netflix film.
I imagine Damon Wayans Jr. was really good in it because he's just always all right in everything.
Yeah, he was definitely the standout for sure.
Yeah.
I still think that Let's Be Cops, I should add that to one of my favorite movies of all time. I love that movie.
I have seen that movie. That movie's out of control.
All right, Josh.
So usually I try and go with good movies so people get a few recommendations for what to sort of go and watch in the week. But this week I decided to give XMen Apocalypse, Bryan Singer's 2016 entry into the long-running franchise, a shot, and my word, did I hate it. I'm not going to get into what this movie is really about, as I would have to explain where it sits in the franchise and what sets of characters we're following. And honestly, that would be giving this movie way more time than it deserves. In fact, I already gave this movie 2.5 hours of my life, and I just need to make sure that no one else does if they're on the fence about this. This movie legitimately has 2 good scenes, and outside of that, it has a bunch of insipid dialogue, stupid character choices, and development, and not a shred of effort on anyone's part. I hated it, and I'm probably going to watch the next one in the series this week just to hate on it even more. Avoid this one at all costs. It's absolute dog shit.
I think what's worse is you texted me before you started watching it, and I was
I knew.
Why? Why are you doing this to yourself?
Because I wanted to see the New Mutants, and I'm such a completionist when it comes to movies that I can't watch sequels out of order, no matter how bad some of them are. So I had to watch this one, and I have to watch this next one, even though the new one's supposed to suck even worse than both of these ones. I just have to torture myself.
I can't wait to see what you think of Dark Phoenix. Ooh, jeez.
Yeah, it's going to be it's not as long. It's 30 minutes less than this one, I think, which is the only thing I'm looking forward to. I will say this, though. My favourite part of this movie was the ending. Because it was over.
I'm guessing Hugh Jackman's not in the newer ones.
Okay, so spoiler alert, because actually I should spoil this whole movie so no one goes out and watches it. But one of the good scenes in this movie, Hugh Jackman shows up for like 3 minutes max, kills a bunch of people, and I'm like, well, great. You've just made a terrible movie seem even worse in comparison by giving this one decent scene.
Yeah.
Yeah. On to the next one, because I hated this.
Yeah, definitely won't be checking that out. What I did watch this week, though, was The Castle, which is probably the most iconic Australian movie I have ever seen. I'd actually never seen it before, but I hear people refer to it a lot, so I decided to check it out. And yeah, I was not disappointed. It's directed by a guy called Rob Sitch, and it's a comedy drama from 1997, which was filmed on a budget of $750K. So yeah, we've got Michael. Is it Michael Keaton or Michael Caton? How do you say?
Michael Keaton, I think it is.
Keaton.
Yeah.
Oh, Caden. No, I think it's Caden, because Caden's the other one.
Yeah, that's where I got confused, I think. But yeah, so Michael Caton, who, if you've ever watched, I think he's in like Packed to the Rafters and like just other Aussie TV shows and stuff. He's playing the main character, Daryl Kerrigan, who's this super lovable Aussie dad. And you've got the Kerrigan family home, which is in the outer Melbourne suburb of Coolaroo, which is his pride and joy. It's literally right next to the airport, which he loves. There's a beautiful view of power lines overhead. And then the home itself is filled with lots of love and memories of, his family who have all grown up there. However, this is all under threat when property developers attempt the compulsory acquisition of the house in order to expand the nearby airport, which is like literally in their backyard. The runway, planes pretty much take off over their house. Can I just say, found this hilarious. The humour was really Australian, really Aussie, so I'm not sure how well it would go down with people who aren't from Australia. But I thought it was really funny. And the fact that it was also quotable too really surprised me. Like,
So
there was
quotable.
there was a few iconic lines that like I was already loosely aware of. Like, I knew Marbo was associated with it, but some of the stuff
Have you put it
The
straight to the
vibe.
pool room?
Yeah.
So
It's just the vibe of the whole movie.
Oh, straight
Yep.
to the pool room, fellas.
yep.
What is he asking for?
Tell him he's streaming.
Yep. So like so many things like that, which like obviously I hear used like fairly regularly, I would say, which like I just didn't realize were from this.
We're going
So, yeah.
Bonnie dude.
Funny dude.
Yeah.
We're going to Bonnie
So
dude.
this
I love this
was
film.
when I grew up. My dad would just always say this was the greatest comedy of all time. So I've seen this. I cannot say how many times. And I remember when I was about 20, one of my mates, we just had nothing to do, and we both had a few days off. And he's like, "You want to do something random?" And I'm like, "All right." So he's like, "Let's drive to the house that's in the castle."
Yep.
So we randomly, in the middle of the night, just drove to the house, and it's only the facade, so it's only the outside. And we're like, "Yep, that's the house from the castle."
Yep.
I have a fun fact about that. The property in Bonnie Doon, where they obviously filmed that part of the movie, it actually came on the market in 2011. The property's real estate agent reported that there were a lot of people who were calling to find out the asking price. And guess what their response was when he told them?
Oh, that is gold.
So really really rated this. I was surprised, like really pleasantly surprised that it was such good comedy.
So good. So good.
Yeah, agreed as well. This is a great comedy. Probably one of the most quotable Australian comedies for Australians, because obviously Crocodile Dundee was a bit more international, but for Australians, this is an epic movie.
This is
I've
like
got another.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, I've just got another good quote which I'd like to share with everyone. Dad reckoned that fishing was 10% brain and 95% muscle, and the rest was just good luck.
Oh, my favourites are the dug a hole lines.
Yeah.
What
Was
is
it
it?
Dale-
with you
Dale
fucking
dug a
dogs
hole?
and cats? That's my favourite.
What was I was gonna say something. This movie's like the film version of Carl Barron. Everyone in Australia knows who it is. They've all seen it. They all find it funny. But I cannot imagine anyone not from Australia watching this movie and having any idea what's going on.
Yeah.
Maybe they should have subtitles for it.
Maybe.
It's also cool because like Eric Banner's in it as well.
Yes.
As the boyfriend.
What movies did they play on the plane?
Mm.
And they had a whole conversation.
Yeah,
Twister was one of
great.
them. I remember Twister was one of them.
Oh, I should remember what the other one was. I've forgotten.
All right, what do we got, Chris?
All right, so I watched E.T., and I know all of us have watched that at some stage, and hopefully nearly everyone in the world has watched it. So a group of alien botanists secretly visit Earth to gather plant specimens. They're spotted by some government agents and quickly flee the scene in their UFO. One of the aliens unfortunately gets left behind. That alien is later named E.T. He seeks refuge in a family's tool shed, where a young boy, Elliot, spots him and decides to take him into their house. Elliot introduces E.T. to his brother and little sister. His little sister's name's Gertie, and she is played by a very, very young Drew Barrymore. The children decide to keep E.T.'s existence a secret. Soon after, however, E.T. falls ill, resulting in a government intervention and a dire situation for both Elliot and the alien. So I love this movie. It's just magical. The directing's exceptional by Steven Spielberg. Has some really iconic scenes. In particular, the one that probably most iconic is where E.T. and Elliot are riding the bicycle through the air with the moon as the silhouette. Also has a line that I think everyone would know as well, the E.T. phone home line. And I just loved it. Got a couple of fun facts for it as well. So the concept was based on an imaginary friend that Spielberg created after his parents divorced in 1960. So I suppose good things can come out of a divorce. Positive there. The budget for it was $10.5 million, and the box office was $792.9 million, which is a huge return on investment. I did the math on it. That's 7,451% profit on its investment. So that's huge. One of the biggest profits of all time in a movie. There was a couple of other things too. Not the first movie, there's a lot of movies before this, but it used specific product placements of Reese's Pieces. Initially, though, it was meant to be M&Ms, but Mars very silly, I can't even say the word, turned them down because Spielberg wouldn't show them the final script. Obviously, that was a big mistake, as Hershey's had I think it was a 65% increase in profit just from the movie. The only exchange. There you go. But the only exchange for that was afterwards they did $1 million worth of advertising for the movie. So kind of a win-win, I suppose. And that's all the stuff I had on it. Just a great magical movie.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I watched this recently too, and I was, really enthralled. It was like something about it was just really endearing too. Like, I don't know, for some reason I like thought that E.T. was going to come off as like just a bit like lame or whatever, especially because he's like, I don't know, weird looking and from the 80s and everything. but like, I found him like really lovable, and like the whole story was just really sweet, and it was a really nice time.
It's not dated either.
I can see why it's a good movie. No, surprisingly not.
Like the alien maybe a little bit, but not like E.T., but not like nothing out of the ordinary. Like it could be released, fairly recent.
Yeah, and I remember the bike scenes being quite good, like visually too. Awesome.
That's Spielberg.
That's the first DVD I ever owned was E.T.
Wow. Nice.
All right. So lastly, I watched Eternal Sunshine of a Spotless Mind, or Of the Spotless Mind, directed by Michael Gondry, and has a really all-star cast. So Jim Carrey, Kate Winslet, Tom Wilkinson, Elijah Wood, Kirsten Dunst. And I highly recommend, this is a movie that you need to see rather than me tell you about it. But the principle is a guy is getting some form of like electroshock therapy, trying to erase a previous lover in a relationship. And during that procedure, you're watching his like memories get erased. So it's essentially, two people are destined to meet, fall in love, fall apart. They both erase each other and then they meet again. Its writers Charlie Kaufman, and he's done like quite a number of really pivotal movies. And like I think what stands out about this movie more than anything is the visual style. It is very Memento-like. The scenes themselves, like as they go and delete memories, like he'll be walking through a library and the entire library will like disappear behind him shelf by shelf and just go into like darkness as you like relive all these memories of this relationship, and like throughout the story once he has his memory erased, he like can still remember little aspects that mean that they meet up again and both go through the same process. It also has Mark Ruffalo in it. That was the other person that I forgot. yeah, again, movie that you need to see in order to like truly appreciate. I gave this a 4.5 stars out of 5, I believe. So yeah, highly recommended.
I've always wanted to check this out, but for the first time, it kind of felt like a Black Mirror episode when you were describing it to me. Like, this is such the romantic Black Mirror type scenario.
Yeah, it definitely does give you Black Mirror vibes. I feel like you can definitely tell that this is like a movie though, and not a Black Mirror episode, just in terms of like visuals alone. I got nothing but good things to say about it, but again, like I feel like I do it a disservice really explaining it. I feel like you just need to like sit down and like chew through it.
Sounds good.
All right, so I think it's time for movie of the week. Okay, so this week's movie of the week is Portrait of a Lady on Fire, directed by Celine Sciamma, starring Naomi Merlant and Adele Hanil. Pardon my French, but this is a French film and you need to watch it with subtitles. It was released in 2019 and attended the Cannes Film Festival. It had a budget of 4.86 million euros and a box office of 23 million. It is shot entirely in 8K. And why don't you jump into the plot, Emily? Tell us a bit more about what this film is.
Okay, so it's France, 1770, so the 18th century. Marianne is commissioned to paint the wedding portrait of Heloise, a young woman who has just left the convent. Because she is a reluctant bride-to-be, Marianne arrives under the guise of companionship, observing her by day and secretly painting her by firelight at night. As the two women orbit one another, intimacy and attraction grow as they share her first moments of freedom. Heloise's portrait soon becomes a collaborative act of and testament to their love. Not sure if I was pronouncing her name just right. I couldn't remember how they said it in the movie.
I think he nailed it, because I was
I?
definitely not going to say him at all.
Yep, you nailed it, I think, as well.
I hope so.
Just hearing you describe this movie is giving me goosebumps, because it is that good.
Yeah.
I mean, now that you mentioned that it's all in 8K, it really makes sense, because how beautiful just even that opening shot when she's in the boat and
it's rocking back and forth.
Yeah, and it's rocking back and forth. And every single one of the painting shots. And I could fawn over this movie all day.
Yeah, it was so oddly satisfying just watching her drawing. Like, it just something about it just felt really kind of like tactile, and I don't know, it was just very beautiful.
I have this thing where sometimes I sort of write like a joke review in my head if I'm not gonna actually give a proper review. And it's the most beautiful episode of Art Attack I've ever seen. Ever remember watching Art Attack and you're just like, yeah, and then it all comes together. And I was just like, the brush strokes, especially when she's painting on, I think it's the wooden canvas, and you see all the colours come together. Oh, just what a beautiful film in every aspect, really.
Chris, what were your thoughts on it?
Yeah.
I agree with the painting scenes and the way it was directed and shot. It was very beautiful to watch how all the paintings were happening and how all the emotional development or the relationship between the two main characters, Heloise and Marianne. Hopefully I pronounced it right. So I really liked it as well.
Oh, sorry, you go. I was just gonna say, like, it all just felt really authentic as well. Like, I think the chemistry between like Marianne and Heloise was like, definitely on. And
extraordinary.
Even just, like, like
on
and
another
even
level.
with the other woman too. Like, just everyone just seemed to click really well, and it all just seemed really natural, which I quite liked.
Yeah, I think that, like, initially I was like, oh, this seems to be quite slow, but it never felt slow. And I think that the build up was like you felt the suspense like grow between them, and the fact that her entire role throughout the film was to like draw her and like develop her features and like really understand. And like, there's that scene where they're talking about like, you bite your lip when you're excited, you raise your
Yes.
eyebrows when you're nervous. Like, that was when I
Yeah.
was like,
Oh,
and like all the while painting, of course. I thought that was like, obviously, like writing or drawing a portrait is a intimate experience, and that slow build up, and then her destroying it to spend more time with her.
and I think the way this film really lingers on facial shots and reaction shots, you really start to feel the emotions that they're going through. And yeah, I haven't felt this much empathy in a long time in a film. By the ending, I was absolutely gone, destroyed.
Yeah, I read something really interesting about it, how like the movie's a subversion of the male gaze. So instead, like literally everything in the movie is actually the feminine gaze, I guess you could call it, because it's all through the eyes of Marianne for the most part. Yeah, so I thought that was kind of cool.
And she's not an object like most films with like. So like, I think one of the cool things, this is all female film. Like there is maybe a minute or two shot with a male in the whole entire film.
I think there's literally one shot of a male on his own, and then it's just crowd shots for the rest of it, if there is another one.
Yeah, I thought it was really cool, like the fact that it was like all women, and also that like this film kind of gave women from the 18th century a voice, I suppose too. Like for me watching it, like I found it kind of sobering, I suppose, to think like, wow, back in those days, if I was alive then, I would have had to just get married off to whoever was chosen for me. Or, if I, had an unwanted pregnancy back then, I would have had to go through all of that really awful stuff that poor girl had to do to try and get rid of that. Like, yeah, I don't know. I just thought it was really good. Yeah.
It was one of the
depiction of that.
Go, Chris.
That method of abortion was that was horrific. The scene where just they're trying to abort the kid for the maid. It just showed you how terrible it would have been to be a female in the 18th century when those sort of things were happening.
I literally watched that scene like from behind my sleeve, like when they were doing the whatever it was, like a paste or something. Like I just couldn't watch.
And then I think what really needs to be mentioned about this film too is its lack of a score, and how all the music in the film is diegetic, which in itself makes what music is in the film so much more insanely effective, because once you hear a song when you haven't heard one, you sort of get the same feeling that Heloise had when Marianne plays her music for the first time. You're like, oh, I forgot what music sounded like, because you're just so entrenched in this world. And the part that really stuck out for me was the crackle of the fire and how you could hear it throughout the entire film. I cannot fault the filmmaking in this film at all. I truly thought it was a perfect movie.
On the note of like the music, like for me, music's usually something that kind of like has a really heavy emphasis on like whatever emotions I'm feeling in a movie. Like even if I just think of, like a scary movie, it's usually the music that'll like, put me a bit on edge and that sort of thing. But I think the fact that like I had such an emotional reaction to this film without any music is like a testament to how well they used all of those other cinematic techniques to do that.
The fact that this movie wasn't nominated for the Best Picture at the Oscars is an absolute joke. I cannot fathom it.
I strongly agree with that as well. This absolutely deserves to be at least nominated.
Yeah, I wouldn't say, definitely give it the award over Parasite, because let's be honest, that it's two perfect movies going up against each other, I would say. But at the same time, some of the movies that were nominated over this, it's just baffling to me.
Yeah. So I guess like I only have one or two fun facts, but one of the fun facts is the director Celine Sciamma and Heloise, the actor played by Adele Hanil. They were previously lovers, and she based this film and like I guess like wrote this film with the intention of her playing Heloise.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow!
Yeah.
Just This movie just keeps getting deeper and deeper.
I think that you really feel for her because, as soon as she finishes that portrait, they have to go their separate ways, and she has to finish it because it's on a deadline. So, time is limited, and just that premise alone.
Yeah, and because this movie paints such a realistic depiction. There's literally no way that they could have a life together under the best possible circumstances. There's no way in which it works. And just the heartbreak of reality, and especially that ending. That ending.
Yeah, when she sees the portrait as well in the museum. Yeah. So.
And then one of the great scenes of music in film, just that last lingering shot of the film. This movie's so good. Yeah,
I'm glad we all fell in the same rating for this one.
Yeah.
I was a 5 on this one. I was a straight solid 5.
I initially was between a 4.5 and a 5. I wasn't too sure, but then I don't know. I feel like it takes some things are an instant 5, and I can instantly justify it in my head. But this one, the more I kind of waited and processed it, and the more I was still thinking about it days after, that's when I was yeah, I can give this a 5.
It's such a weighty film that it takes a while to settle in.
Yeah, I only gave this a 4. My justification for that is I do think it was an absolutely fantastic film, and it totally has the merit to be a 5 out of 5 film. I think that I can't recommend this to everyone though. I feel like it very much is a
an art.
It's an art house sort of film, and I know that that's not for everyone. And it's quite slow, but very deliberate. But I just can see that. I guess I personally should have given it a 5, maybe.
It sounds like you try to justify why other people would give it a 4.
Yeah.
So you've given it a 4.
Yeah. Maybe everyone was just a little bit too pretty for my liking in the film.
Yeah. Not enough underarm hair, even though it was there. I did.
It was there. Also, very attractive women leads. So, for what? Am I allowed to say that? Is that bad? No, I'm allowed to say that.
I don't think so. They're both beautiful women.
They are definitely beautiful women. I think it goes against the point of the whole
film.
male gaze that everyone was talking about.
Yep.
But
I'm digging myself a hole. Chris, quickly jump in. What did you think?
I was the same as you, Adam. I gave it a 4 as well. The start for me, I was struggling the first sort of 20 to 30 minutes, but then it does come together. But it was a very slow burn to start with for me. But yeah, very thought-provoking, emotional.
Sorry, can I ask a question? What was up with her seeing Heloise in the white dress around? What was everyone's interpretation of that? Because I was confused.
So that's a reference to, is it the orifice story that they talk about?
Yeah, with Eurydice.
Yeah. So how I was saying about when I say turn around, you'll die or something like that. I can't remember the story specifically, but it was sort of what she was trying to walk away from was the reality of the goodbye.
Okay.
I believe anyway.
Awesome. Well, I think that's a pretty good place to wrap up the movie of the week. What's the movie of the week next week, guys?
So are we going to go with Donnie Darko?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think we go with Donnie Darko.
Bit of Jake Gyllenhaal.
Sweet. Right.
And Maggie Gyllenhaal, actually. It's a sibling film.
Oh, okay. Cool. I'm excited for that. All right, let me just play the jingle out. All right, so thanks so much for listening to this episode of Film School Podcast, episode 9 for this Wednesday, the 9th of September. As mentioned, you can follow us on Instagram, filmscool_pod. You can also follow us all on Letterboxd, and the details are in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and thanks so much for listening. And definitely check out Portrait of a Lady on Fire, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.
Cheers.